new laws taking effect in January. Savannah specifically was the woman who you see right there on your screen. Savannah's law is something that went into effect earlier this year that allowed for the creation of a domestic violence registry that now has gone into place right here, right now in 2026. And I want to play this story for you because I think you'll find it is pretty compelling when you understand why the domestic violence registry was created to prevent things like what happened to Savannah. Check this out.
Savannah Puckett's mom, Kim Dodson, says her daughter always had a servant's heart.
Mom, they're picking on him or they're picking on her.
That's why she became a sheriff's deputy in Robertson County.
She was known by the sheriff's office as Mother Hen at 22 years old.
And why Kim is sure if Savannah had known the man she was seeing was a convicted domestic abuser, she would have run the other way.
I honestly feel that if she had known that, she could still be here.
In January of 2022, the man Savannah had been seeing for only about 2 months shot and killed her in her Springfield home, which he then set on fire.
For a few months, I didn't even know who I was. It was just such a shock and such a tragedy that my body just shut down. And then I'm like, something's got to be done.
So Kim started going to the Capitol, pushing to pass a bill that would create a state registry for repeat domestic violence offenders, the first of its kind in the country. And this year, she got it done. Under Savannah's law, somebody convicted of at least 2 domestic violence-related charges like murder, assault, stalking, get put on the publicly available and searchable list.
These folks have had their due process, and they've gone through the court process. They're not just accused, they're not just charged, but they are convicted domestic violence offenders.
Nashville YWCA VP of Communications and Advocacy, Michelle Mowry Johnson, says Tennessee is consistently in the top 10 states for domestic violence homicides, but identifying abusers earlier could help end the cycle.
It's not a one and done, generally. In most cases, abusers are repeat offenders, and it often takes somebody multiple times to report that abuser.
Savannah's law goes into effect on Thursday, just a few weeks before the 3rd anniversary of her death.
Savannah's still working, still serving her community, protecting her community.
Kim has also started the Deputy 550's Warriors Foundation in Savannah's honor. She hopes to open a domestic violence shelter in the future. In Robertson County, Braden Ross, WSMV4.
Okay, I wanted to show you this Tennessee Persistent Domestic Violence Offender Registry that was that went into effect, that was created from Savannah's law. So you see it here enacted as Tennessee Public Chapter 520, creates a public registry maintained by TBI. It's as simple as clicking right here on search and then putting the name of a person there. And then, of course, right now it's saying no matching search results found because we haven't searched a name. But I do want to show you this as well so you understand why this was created. It was created, updated, and managed by TBI. A name would be added after somebody received their second conviction, and then that's made possible by Tennessee passing Savannah's law, as mentioned right there. But again, Tennessee Persistent Domestic Violence Offender Registry, it's all right there. You can look for it as you want to learn more. Okay, so let's talk about the next one here. This is specifically about SNAP benefits. This is something that's affecting not just us here in Tennessee, but in 18 different states. So we're talking about millions of people. Let me pull up here what you need to know about SNAP. Here it is. No longer covering certain sugary food or drinks. No more soda, energy drinks, candy, or dessert. 18 states, including Tennessee, received those waivers. So clearly it's, look, it's something that we've heard talked about for quite some time. There's been a lot of conversation around this one. And so, it's going to be interesting to see what actually comes of it as this goes into effect, which it just went into effect yesterday. I want to play for you some of our coverage from this story. Check this out here.
This new law is meant to tighten the oversight of hemp products sold in Tennessee. Governor Bill Lee has signed legislation that bans certain THCA products from being sold here in the state. And under this law, the Alcoholic Beverage Commission will now take over as the regulator for hemp sales, moving that responsibility away from the Department of Agriculture. And this law also clarifies that THCA is considered hemp-derived, but anything with more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis will not be allowed to be sold. This is one of those changes that could be affecting a lot of families going into the new year. Beginning July 1st, Tennessee will no longer allow SNAP benefits to be used to buy certain sugary foods and drinks. We're talking about non-essential items, things like soda, energy drinks, candy, and prepared desserts. Now, this comes after the U.S. Department of Agriculture approved waivers for 18 states, including Tennessee, to make that change. And supporters say the goal here is to encourage healthier food choices, while critics argue that it limits options for families already stretching tight budgets. Now, this does not affect staple grocery items. SNAP benefits can still be used for things like fruits, vegetables, meat, dairy, and bread. And as more laws take effect in 2026, this is just one of several changes Tennesseans will want to keep an eye on. And we have a full list of those new laws going into effect on our free WSMV4 News app if you want to read more about them. Reporting in Nashville, I'm Drelyn Bukovac, WSMV4.
All right, another one that you need to be aware of is something that affects tattoos. Human trafficking identification training is going to start right now for specifically for tattoo artists. It went into effect here this year, 2026. So the training will be there so they know how to spot instances of human trafficking and report it as well, as you're looking at some video of that process, you know, the selection and then the actual inking as well. Let me pull up for you WSMV.com. We've got this story showing you here buying junk food with SNAP benefits, a part we were just mentioning just a moment ago. And then I'm going to scroll up to the top so you see it here. List new laws in Tennessee taking effect January 2026. We've got a lot of the conversation right there. Also, there is some implied consent driving under the influence in Tennessee. There's some of that in this web article. There's also, again, the SNAP conversation, Savannah's Law, which we were talking about just a moment ago, and then THC and hemp in Tennessee. This is something that started to tell you about in Joyland's story just a moment ago. And I want to pull it up for you because this is something that you should know a little bit more about, because this is about THCA. Those products will no longer be sold if they're in dry weight more than 0.3%. It's going to be banned. Some enforcement is starting now. Other parts of that enforcement does begin July 1st. So it's something that you'll definitely want to be tuning into if this is a conversation you follow or an issue you follow. I'm going to play for you our Drelyn Bukovac's reporting on this topic from just a couple of days ago.
This new law is meant to tighten the oversight of hemp products sold in Tennessee. Governor Bill Lee has signed legislation that bans certain THCA products from being sold here in the state. And under this law, the Alcoholic Beverage Commission will now take over as the regulator for hemp sales, moving that responsibility away from the Department of Agriculture. And this law also clarifies that THCA is considered hemp-derived, but anything with more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis will not be allowed to be sold. Another compound, THCP, is not considered hemp-derived under these new rules. These changes come as THC seltzers have become a popular alternative to alcohol.
Seltzers usually come in cans with 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams of THC, but this new federal law will limit the amount to 0.4 milligrams.
You don't feel anything at 0.4 milligrams, which is part of the reason why they chose it.
It is worth noting that parts of this law were originally set to take effect January 1st, but enforcement has been delayed until at least July to give businesses time to adjust to this. And if you want to read more about that law, as well as other laws going into effect January 1st, you can do that on our free WSMV4 News app. Reporting in Nashville, I'm Drelyn Bukovac, WSMV4.
Okay, let me show this to you here. Again, list these new laws take effect in Tennessee. Oh, excuse me, this was July 1st. Let me go back to the one for January 1st taking effect as I back up here. This is the laws taking effect January 2026. See, you're watching right here in the video player our live coverage as we speak. And then, of course, the list of laws that are taking effect right now. 2 new laws sparking. You can read some of our previous coverage here. And then the implied consent driving under the influence in Tennessee. Some of that coverage. Also the new laws specifically that deal with buying junk food with SNAP benefits. Savannah's Law, which creates that registry of persistent domestic violence offenders, which we were just looking into. And this story of Tennessee, THC and hemp in Tennessee. And then the amendment clarifying that the 0.3% is the limit for Delta 9 THC content for hemp-derived cannabinoids. So lots of coverage here for you as we have watched these laws come to pass in Tennessee, and then also as they are now going into effect as of January 1st. As always, you can find everything you need to know on WSMV.com. For now, I'm Lauren Lowry, and I'll see you on TV.